Good morning, everybody. I'm Stephen Henry. I'm the founder of Positive Planet. Welcome to this week's edition of the LinkedIn Live Positive Planet podcast. This is a series where we invite industry professionals to come and chat about a wide range of relevant topics, share knowledge with us, and more importantly, offer insights to everyone about all matters relating to sustainability. This is episode 7 of our podcast, and we're focusing on bridging the sustainability skills gap within the marketing industry. You can find out more on the Positive Planet LinkedIn page. Today's session is recorded and you'll be able to watch it back alongside all our other sessions by visiting our LinkedIn page. I'm joined today by PK Whalen from the Positive Planet team. She's one of our amazing trainers. Also with us is the fantastic Anthony Bullick from Outwrite PR and published author Paul Randle, and who's co-founder of the Sustainable Marketing Compass. So welcome everybody this morning, guys. How are you doing?
Very good.
Good. And good to see you all. There's going to be a chance to ask some questions throughout, so you can post on the chat if there's anything you want to ask. We've got Billy on from our team who's going to monitor that, and we'll flag those if we have time. First thing this morning, I'm going to chat a bit to Anthony, and question to Anthony is, how would you define PR and how it has an impact on how PR has impacted, or ESG rather, has impacted PR and the whole communication side?
Yeah, I think, it's a really good question to start off with, is that definition of PR and communications, because, you speak to a lot of different people within the industry and within the business world, and they have lots of different definitions of PR. Some of them view it as just media relations, or they view it as something that you wheel out when you're facing an issue or a crisis. Now, if we take a step back, PR is about your reputation. It's the result of what you do, what you say, and what others say about you. And for any organization, regardless of their size, their reputation is absolutely critical to their success and achieving their objectives. We are the conscience of the organization. We want to make sure that the moral compass is pointed in the right direction, and linking that through to how ESG has impacted PR. It's another topic that's of interest for an organization's stakeholders, and because us in the PR world, our main role is building relationships and building trust with stakeholders. We need to understand which elements of ESG are of interest to the stakeholders, why they're of interest to the stakeholders, and how we can build trust with them through, building ESG into the communication plans. But I think it's been really positive, ESG for PR, because it continues to reinforce the strength of PR and its role within the business world.
Great. And Anthony, where does Outwrite sit within all this? How do you support organizations? How do you bring sustainability and ESG into PR?
So there's a couple of ways we work with organizations. One is they're already in the renewables sector or the ESG sector, and they have got new technology that they're trying to bring to market. The other side is your general organizations who are on their own journey to net zero, or they're on their own path with improving their social value, and we'll work with them to tell their story, whether that's through media relations, content marketing, expert commentary, new style video interviews, social media content, even through to making sure that it's inputted into their crisis communications plan as well.
Okay, fantastic. And you were talking there about sort of the defining PR and how ESG has impacted that. On the flip side, how has PR and comms impacted the world of ESG?
I think it's impacted it in the sense of it's making sure organizations aren't just doing lip service. So because we as PRs are the conscience of the organization, we're able to challenge the senior leadership teams to make sure that they are doing the right thing, because it's the right thing to do, rather than just saying, oh yes, we've got 3 solar panels on our roof. Well, if that's not making a difference, we can't really shout about that. And it's also helping ensure that organizations aren't greenwashing and they're not green hushing either.
Yeah. Okay. What's your definition of greenwashing? You hear loads of these, and I'm going to ask everybody about it. How do you define it? And And second part, explain what you think greenwashing is as well, because that's quite a new term, isn't it?
It is. So, taking the first question around greenwashing, for us, it's purposely or inadvertently misleading people in order for them to have a positive opinion about you based on your environmental credentials. And the reason why that's viewed as greenwashing is because if we're misleading them to have a positive opinion about you, when whatever you've said isn't actually correct or it's not 100% accurate, that's going to alter their buying decision. They might buy your product or your service because they want to buy from an environmentally conscious company, or they may want to join your company as a new recruit because they believe that you are, sort of conscious around all the environmental and social issues that are taking place.
Yeah, great. And I think it's really interesting how greenwashing piece, and some of it can be like really small things, can trip organizations up. I was talking to a client of ours the other day, and they hadn't engaged right across the organization in terms of what they were doing on the sustainability strategy. They ran out of straws in their catering function. Somebody just bought plastic straws because they were the cheapest. I had no idea about the whole organization's net zero strategy. And then suddenly they're pushing out straws on a Saturday or something. And that went out on social media quite quickly, just saying, how's this sustainable? Why have we gone to plastic straws now? And suddenly they're dealing with not a massive thing, but it's those things that just trip you up a bit and can damage reputations quite quickly as well.
No, absolutely. And you've just hit the nail on the head that was internal. And when we talk about PR, we often think externally, but actually we need to start from within. Our employees are our biggest brand ambassadors, and we need to get them on side, but we need to communicate with them about what we as an organization are trying to achieve. And if you want to take that a step further, we need to get them involved in the process right at the beginning and make them feel empowered and involved in the decisions that the organization are making, because you're going to get buy-in. And that employee probably wouldn't have gone out and bought the plastic straws.
Yeah, I agree. Great. So where does PR and comms then fit into a brand's net zero journey, and why is its presence really critical in that?
For us, it's got to be at the outset. Historically, the decision is made within an organization, and they just go to the PR team or the comms team and say, right, can you talk about this? Then it's too late if a wrong decision has been made. So if we have PR having a seat at the table where the decisions are being made, when ideas and discussions are being thrown around, we can say, it sounds like a good idea in principle, but we know this particular stakeholder group won't latch onto that, and that could actually damage the reputation. So for us, PR, because it's around reputation and it's about relationship with stakeholders, we want to be involved in the decision-making process, as well as then understanding how to communicate that out.
Yeah, I see it as part of a sort of broader challenge with sustainability as well, that often organizations embark in this and think it's a sort of a project that you can do, and they don't integrate it into the wider business strategy. And that's where things start falling apart. We're going to do some of these things, but we have so many other parts of our organizational strategy that are in conflict with this, or are going to present challenges and risks to delivery on it. And as a result, business as usual kicks in. You're just doing ordinary things on a day-to-day basis, and suddenly you look and go, we haven't done some of this stuff, and actually we're going the wrong way because we haven't really considered how we deliver it, and we haven't considered how we message it, etc., and all those other parts within the organization. Often marketing's left out of that sustainability conversation as a result as well. It's seen as an operational delivery rather than a broad organizational delivery.
No, it is. And I think that's where PR, is misunderstood. To get theoretical, it's we refer to it as boundary spanning. It should span every single department within an organization, whether it's customer service, HR, operations, finance. There needs to be a relationship between the PR team and all of those different departments, because decisions are being made in all of those that impact the reputation.
Yeah, I agree. So on a tactical level, Anthony, what are the latest techniques and best practices for communicating with stakeholders?
I think the beauty of this is it's the same. The PR people should take the same approach as they do with any campaign that they do. I know we've just said it's not a campaign, but any sort of approach to communicating an organizational goals. And, it's understanding where the audience is, who is the audience? What is it they want to know? In what format do they want the content delivered? Is it a podcast like this? Is it the written word? Is it video? Is it infographics? Is it through toolbox talks if you're on a construction site? And when do they want that delivered? What days of the week? What time? And things like that. And as well as drip feeding the content out through the usual channels around media relations, social media, website content, etc. We're seeing a lot of demand for organizations to package everything together and produce an ESG report. And, a lot of organizations that we're producing ESG reports for aren't legally required to do it because they don't fall into that bracket, but they want to do it because they want to be seen as a leader in their industry. And the beauty of the ESG reports is they're being repurposed. So we can produce the ESG report where it, tells the stories of the last 12 months and, what the plans are for going forward. But organizations can pull out different sections of those and use them in tenders, for example, especially in the public sector. They're able to pull out all of this, work and put that in the tender to support them with winning new business. It creates additional social media content for them. So as well as drip feeding content out and producing an ESG report, a full-on publication, organizations are getting very savvy at being able to repurpose the content to get the best bang for the buck.
Yeah, and there's a big piece of trust around this as well, I think, isn't there? And that the transparency of communication through things like climate impact reporting, through ESG reporting, it's really important that it's done well. It's really important it's done accurately. And honestly, I think it's another big important part of this, because that brand trust is really critical. And I know that's something we really work with our clients on when they're doing that, ensuring that that information is accurate. It's something that you're confident to share, and you can do that in a really transparent way as well, and talk about things that have gone well, maybe things that haven't gone so well, but do that honestly. I think when brands do that well, there's huge kudos for them, and I see that publicly. They get a lot of praise for that, saying we tried to do this and it didn't work as well as we thought.
No, and we've just seen that recently with Lego. A couple of years ago, they said they were going to produce, a sustainable, Lego bricks. And it came out a few weeks ago that actually we're going to do more harm to the environment if we go down the alternative route. So they decided not to do that, which is it's the correct decision.
Yeah.
They were open and honest with everybody to say, look, we said we were going to do this. We're not going to do it, but we're doing it for the right reasons. And they came out with a more positive reputation because of that, rather than just, steaming ahead and just doing it anyway.
Yeah, great. Look, final question from me, and I just want to go back to the subject of greenwashing in a bit more detail. How much of a risk is it for brands? What are you seeing gone wrong? How's that affecting brand reputation?
I think it's a huge risk. Now, we only tend to see in the press at the minute the large companies who get accused of greenwashing, and usually it's the Advertising Standards Authority that ban adverts, and then that makes it into the media. But we're starting to see it on a much more SME level as well, and it's not necessarily with the media, but it's with more savvy consumers and more savvy people. And we're seeing that with people wanting to buy products, but we're seeing it in the recruitment process as well. Our clients are telling us that in interviews with potential candidates, when it comes to the end of the interview and it's, have you got any questions for us? They're not asking about how many holidays do I get? What's the salary? Are there any bonuses? They're asking the open questions to the organizations around what's their journey to net zero policy? What's their environmental policy? And unless it's a genuine policy that they have in place, they're not going to be able to talk about it in a confident manner, and people will see through that and could potentially not decide to join that organization. So we're seeing it at the SME level as well, where people are much more savvy and asking those questions. And sometimes it's not about purposely greenwashing. Sometimes it's just inadvertently doing it. Maybe you didn't get it, cross-checked by an independent third party, and you've just relied on your own data. And, human error can come into that, especially for SMEs, where it can become a bolt-on to somebody's existing job role. They're just told to collect the data from the supply chain or whatever it may be. And they, they're then inadvertently greenwashing, but at the end of the day, they are greenwashing. You asked earlier around green hushing. That's where, brands are deciding not to talk about their environmental efforts because they are fearful of inadvertently greenwashing, or they're fearful of being held to, the goals and objectives that they set.
Yeah. And okay, and there's a toolkit on this as well, isn't there? We've got, there's do you want to talk about that a little bit and how the kind of the things that brands can do?
Yeah. So, around avoiding greenwashing, it's exactly what you said earlier, Stephen. It's being open, honest, and transparent. There's no other way around that. As long as you're being honest with your communication, as long as at the top, the decisions that have been made with the right intentions in mind, and then you're open and honest with that communication going forward, you'll be able to avoid the greenwashing. And something's just come up on the screen there. There is a how to combat greenwashing toolkit that is in the link below. So click on that of how to avoid it. But at the end of the day, if you're honest, open, and transparent, you can't go far wrong.
Cool. Great. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Very interesting. Really insightful. And thank you for that. I'm going to jump across to Paul next, and I'm going to give Paul a shameless plug for his book, which makes me feel very sort of chat show hosty. I've always wanted to do that. Paul, do you want to tell us about your book? Because I think you just published on Monday, haven't you? Has it just come out this week?
It did. It went live on Monday. Thank you, Stephen. It just feels like I'm standing on a street corner with a clapperboard saying bye now. But yes, we published
Paul. When's the free copy coming in the post? I'm looking for a signed one.
It's on its way, Stephen. I signed it for you as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, it's called Sustainable Marketing: The Role of the Industry, the role of the industry in a sustainable future. And it's something I've co-authored with my colleague and co-founder Alexis Eyre, and we've been working on it for the last couple of years. Really, it's for the marketer and for the sustainability lead. It's an introduction to the whole range or topic of sustainability. What is sustainability? That's it's a big problem with education in the marketers community, that they don't understand the complexity and the technicalities of sustainability. It's then quite a brutal exposure of marketing's own impacts, which is often ignored. And when I say marketing, I include all disciplines from advertising and media and PR and digital. And then we come to a point where we talk about what actually is the role of marketing and what should the role of marketing be. And we propose a new role for marketing and a toolkit, which is the Sustainable Marketing Compass, for how you start bringing that into your own marketing and embedding sustainability at the heart of marketing, not just in the organization.
Yeah. And is that marketing impact's pretty huge, isn't it? I'm sure I saw something last week saying it was over 200 million tons a year in the UK alone of emissions relating directly back to marketing activity. And we were at the B2B Marketing Expo last week, actually exhibiting. And it's amazing how much the industry is still pushing sort of plastic tat as incentives to, in some way that people think are going to drive more business, and I'd really like to see that, marketing embrace much more of a shift in terms of its transition. And even on another level, that expo in itself, which is marketing led, all the carpet gets pulled up after every event and landfilled essentially, and it's and it's all those things that I think we're just not conscious enough of in that marketing environment.
I would agree. We take it to another level, to be perfectly honest. You need to think about marketing's impacts in 3 areas. There's the operational impact that you've talked very much about there. If you look at the whole online industry, that's got the same carbon footprint as the aviation industry. The global event industry has the same carbon footprint as the entire United States of America. They are staggering impacts from what we do. But then of the three areas I'll talk about, I'd say that's the least. And unfortunately, that's where the industry is focused.
Yeah.
You have things like AdNet Zero that are focused on, the production of our creative assets and things of that sort of nature. Yes, we need to do that. But actually, building on Anthony's point, just whacking a few beehives on the roof of the agency isn't going to solve anything.
Yeah.
The second impact we talk about is one we should really have at our hearts, is actually brain print. Brain print is the collective impact of you, I, everybody else on the call and in kind of developed countries receiving between 4,000 to 10,000 media impressions a day, 70% of which are based on inadequacy marketing, basically saying, why is your hair so grey? Why haven't you been out on the bike this morning? Why haven't you? Why haven't you? Why haven't you? Making you compare yourself against
attack, Paul.
yeah, a personal attack on myself. I always pick on myself. It's an easier way to go. But it makes me benchmark myself against my peers, and I come up wanting, and as a consequence, I go buying. And through that, the amount of kind of like bias we inject into society, we've embedded lifestyles and aspirational lifestyles that have been so embedded in society that they've become cultural norms. As an example, if I want to express love, I have to now buy a rock. Why does that make any sense whatsoever? We turn Father Christmas red. We create things like Black Friday and things of that nature. We've created the two-car family. We've created these aspirational lifestyles that are wholly unsustainable, yet they're just expected in society. And within that, there's all the kind of like inequity that the bias in data, the accidental bias in AI, the fact that men appear in ads more than women, and when women appear in ads, guess what? They have no clothes on. All those things that we subject people to is part of the brain print, and we have no collective duty of care to our audiences at the industry level on how we approach brain print. And actually, as far back as in 1992, the UN was asking for our industry to address that. And it addressed it in Agenda 21, it addressed it in Agenda 30, which underpins the UN SDGs. The IPCC asked us again last year in 2022 on the back of their report to actually start doing this, because we could actually take 6% off the carbon footprint of the planet like that if we just started changing our brain print. And then you get to the final one, which is the biggest impact. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the advertised emissions report that was pulled together by the purpose disruptors. But this took basically, an established attribution methodology that said that product, that ad sold that product had that carbon footprint. There's your advertised emissions. In the UK alone, that identified that advertising accounts for 32% of the carbon footprint of each and every individual in the UK. And you have to pause and think about that. When you add up the footprint of what we're doing, the emotive pressure of what we're putting onto society, and then the load we're putting onto the planet, we have to figure out as marketeers, which side of the planet, which side of, sustainability do we want to be on? Because at the moment, we're driving the planet in the wrong direction. We're not being or doing anything that's driving it to a sustainable future.
Yeah. And what do you think is that biggest challenge then for sustainable marketing?
It's the role we have. The reason why we've become a $740 billion industry is because we are phenomenally good at driving growth. We are called the engine of growth in society. We actually have individuals with job titles as growth engineer. And we have that perspective. We operate with a fundamental law that there's infinite growth, and that's what we're after. And yet we all know, the scientists tell us all the while, that that's ridiculous. And the amount of sustainability leads that I speak to that say, can we not just stop marketing? Can we not turn marketing off? And I say, no, we can't, because actually marketing has a role to play. The role we play in our economic model is that, the economists in the 1960s said, we have rational human with perfect knowledge. To which any marketeer went, well, that's a bit dumb. But actually, when it comes to motivating irrational humans and giving them knowledge of products and services, we can help with that. Guess what? In a sustainable world, We're still going to have irrational humans without perfect knowledge. And our behavior changing capabilities are massively important, but not if they're pushing us towards infinite growth. If they're pushing us towards regenerating the planet, if they're pushing us towards an equitable society, if they're pushing us towards prosperity, equitable prosperity, rather than just commercial growth, then it's a valuable industry. If not, it's a damaging industry.
Yeah. And it's frightening. I mean, there's more than half the world's GDP is dependent in some way on nature, yet we erode this massively through our actions within business typically, and that's it's disappearing frighteningly. So many marketers focus their claims and the sustainability credentials of their products and services. So they focus on their claims rather. And but you're arguing that marketing has more to answer for than getting those claims wrong. What else does it need to consider?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of marketers, and it comes back to that education piece, without properly understanding sustainability, we're going to get it wrong. That's where greenwashing really comes from. As Anthony's saying, and most of the time, greenwashing is accidental because you've got marketers being told by their board to talk about the sustainability products, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And that's where it comes from. But actually, it's not just about the messaging. If you want to drive behavioral change, you need motivation and capacity to change. If all you're doing is messaging, and motivation, it's not going to go anywhere. You actually have to think about the capacity for change. And as marketeers, we have products, we have price, we have place. They're all levers we have in our toolkit that can help build change. And we consult with organizations where we build out green growth strategies that orchestrate all those pieces. And actually, I'd argue if you want to not greenwash, it's not a case of, yes, you need to be authentic and correct, but that has a fundamental flaw in it anyway, and that trust in advertising is at a record low. In some of the workshops we do, we put up 3 photos on the screen. We put up Donald Trump, Boris Johnson, and me, and we ask the audience, who do you trust the most? And actually, thankfully, I've never been voted last, but I am the least trusted person of those 3. So no matter how honest and full of integrity your communications are, your audiences don't trust you. When we talk to brands and say, do you actually ask your audiences in your brand studies if they trust you? And they say, well, no, we ask them if they love us. We ask them if we're calm and cuddly and those sorts of things. Do they outright ask if they trust you? No. And I think that sort of thing's a big gap. So we need to take a step back and say, okay, so how can we use all the levers we've got in our toolkit? How do we change the product? How do we change the product mix? How do we change the impact of the product? How do we use pricing to put the right behavioral nudges in place? And one of the reasons why sustainable pound hasn't materialized is because we've premium priced it. You've put the wrong behavioral nudge in place. How do you actually use place? It's like the amount of sustainable startups we talk to that say, I've got my sustainable widget and you can get it same day delivery on Amazon. And it's like, what? It's like the whole go-to-market has to be, if not sustainable, but regenerative. And when you've built all those component parts out in partnership with your sustainability leads, the entire remit of your comms changes. If you're just going out talking about what sustainable products you've got, all you're doing is giving yourself a license to sell. All you're doing is giving yourself a license to carry on pursuing infinite growth. If you're trying to achieve a green growth strategy, or you're trying to degrowth out of a damaging product and green growth into a sustainable product, that always becomes with a behavioral change. I've gone from a petrol car to an electric car. There's a behavior change in that. And that needs to become, that's an educational role for the brand. That's a motivational role for the brand. That's a capacity delivery change for the brand. And, that changes the fundamental requirement of why you're doing comms in the first place.
Yeah. I think there's all that pricing piece you talk about is really interesting because sustainability to me needs to be accessible to all. And when sustainable products are really premium products because of their pricing, it makes it it's a cost-based decision and it makes it non-accessible for some people. And that's one of the challenges, certainly with things like FMCG marketplace, as they promotes sustainable goods, they are more expensive, and that shouldn't be the case, really. It's
but they're not. I'll challenge that. They're not always. They are if you approach it in a traditional mindset. You know, if you come at it, you know, let's take kind of something like shampoo or something like that, which comes in a tiny little bottle, and it's kind of like, and there's always discounts off it and stuff like that. It's kind of like ship it in a bigger bottle.
Yeah.
You know, you'll save money in operations, you'll save money in everything. And, you know, often sustainability delivers cost savings. Often sustainability delivers, you know, efficiencies across the organization. You might actually have more costs in elements of your product you're having to bring in. But when you put them into a bigger profit matrix, a bigger pricing matrix, you know, you can mitigate that. You know, and actually you can maintain competitiveness and profitness if by kind of premium pricing your legacy products to offset, you know, development costs in your sustainable ones. That allows you to put the behavioral nudge in while you're still maintaining your profit level.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I think what I see in the marketplace with things like those sort of FMCG goods is a pricing strategy that is clearly aimed at a sort of middle class audience, if you like, an affluent audience of trying to appeal with those products. I think from a business perspective, I totally agree. I think there's huge opportunity to drive more margin, more profit by being more efficient. But it's the marketing of those sustainable products. I think it's one of the challenges that it's deliberately targeting a marketplace and making sustainability feel like an inaccessible option for those on lower income, and that shouldn't be. You know, it should be that sustainability is around efficiency, it's around doing things, it's low waste, etc., and all of those things should bring a lower price. But brands typically don't do that very well, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they bring, you know, different models. I mean, I know that, you know, you've got, you know, in some of the kind of FMC goods going into kind of African countries are deliberately in small packages because of the buying power of those audiences. But that only massively shoots up the plastic problem.
Yeah.
It's kind of, we'll take a whole different approach to pricing then. You know, it's kind of like, why go with your Western market pricing model into those countries?
Yeah.
You know, why not go in with a different pricing model that allows you to reduce plastic?
Yeah. Interesting. And you're talking about some really significant impacts here. How does marketing start to address that, Paul? And where would you even start?
It has to start with the education piece. You know, I think, you know, I spent kind of 15 years in digital transformation, and it feels at the moment that marketing's where we were in those early days of digital. You know, I remember running around places like Microsoft and Philips saying, oh, we need a website. And have you heard of this thing called Facebook and Twitter? You know, and you had little pockets of kind of enthusiasm and expertise, and gradually that got kind of ahead of steam until you had the big investments come in. And now digital is the water we swim in. You know, sustainability is going to become the water industry swims in. So, you know, just as none of us can sit on this call and not be constantly updating ourselves on the changes on digital, you have to do the same with sustainability. It changes all the while. Then you need to actually shift your mindset, and you need tools to actually do that. You know, it's about saying, okay, how do I get the culture that's in marketing away from just being focused on growth? How do you bring, you know, and that's as much bringing in other relationships. I mean, out of consulting I do, well, I'm actually introducing the CMO to the sustainability lead for the first time. But actually, you know, the better, more advanced organizations are where sustainability and marketing are one and the same function.
Yeah.
And the decision making comes around actually identifying your commercial targets, because they're never going to go away. They're always going to be there. Your commercial targets, your environmental targets, your societal targets, but then looking at the causalities between them. What actually is the linkage between how much you sell and the environmental footprint? What's actually the link between the environmental footprint and the societal impacts? And what happens when you've got societal and commercial kind of dependencies as well? And actually, the new KPIs that marketeers need to be setting themselves are based on those interdependencies, not just on the commercial one. And that's where the new really exciting role for marketing comes from, because it means rather than being this engine of growth, which is a bit tedious and dull, to be perfectly honest, we become this kind of like conductor or arbitrary arbitrate a valve that's actually balancing performance across all these interconnected dimensions, which means we need to be far more nuanced and far more insightful with what we do as marketeers.
Yeah.
And then we have a far more profound impact on what we're doing in our own lives and what we're doing for our companies. And I think that's massively exciting.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for that. Really interesting, Paul. We're going to jump over to PK in a second and talk about how we bridge that skills gap. Just before we do, thanks again for the discount offer on your new book. I'm going to plug it again for you, Paul. I think Billy's going to put it on the link there. But you have offered a 20% discount to anybody who's on the event today. I'd really recommend getting Paul's book. I've had a scan through some of the notes on it, and it looks fantastic, and I think really valuable for anybody who's on the podcast today and is a marketing professional. So we're going to jump over to PK. Lots of stuff coming up there, PK, talking about skills gap in marketing, and I know we've done some research and would suggest that approximately half of marketeers have no real knowledge around sustainability and how to integrate that into the role. How do they bridge that gap?
Well, it really connects to something that all three of you illustrated in different ways, and that is it's enhancing that knowledge base around sustainability. And they don't need to become experts around climate change or sustainability, but having some base knowledge would really be impactful. And each of you gave a story that was perfect for that. So, Stephen, you talked about the event where the paper straws ran out. And if that particular employee who ran out to replace those straws had a tiny bit of sustainability education, they would have known not to get those plastic straws. Now, they weren't in marketing or PR, but that certainly created an immense problem for the marketing and PR team. As we know, one picture can paint, it says 1,000 words. And then to some of Anthony's comments, adding that education element into sustainability would mean that actually the PR and the marketing people, if they are at the table, and they absolutely should be, could then push back on the leadership, as Anthony said, and say, whoa, actually, this is not accurate, this is misleading, and it's unsubstantiated. And additionally, Anthony also mentioned in terms of recruitment, so this impacts HR in a variety of ways as well. Not understanding sustainability and having that education element means that they're not going to realize that, KPMG put out a report in January of this year that 46% of employees look at a company's ESG commitments. And 20% of working age adults, that's from 18 to about 55-ish, actually have turned down 20% have turned down a job because they didn't believe in the company's ESG commitment. So that's just one study from KPMG. And all of that education element, having that knowledge base, ties into what Paul said about having that, being responsible and have a duty of care, but also understanding, are these the best ways we need to be advertising? Are these the best products for our company? How can we tie all of this in? So for me, granted, I'm a trainer, I have a bias here, but it is all about education.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting statistics is that within the next 5 years, 75% of the workforce will be millennials, and their attitude towards working for purpose-driven organizations is massively different to prior generations. We're seeing a real shift and a trend in this. How can training impact your role as a marketeer then?
Well, it just gives you the ability to be able to better understand, is this claim unsubstantiated? Is it false or misleading? It helps you understand that actually this might be a vague term, and using carbon neutral or net zero, they're using it in an inappropriate way. And again, that will cause a PR havoc down the road. So having some net zero or some training around sustainability, climate change, just having a base knowledge of that will really help them avoid some of these pitfalls. And, there's also blue washing as well, which is tying into making false or misleading claims about societal related issues out of your ESGs or your greenwashing, which can be, modern day slavery, health and safety issues. So there's a whole element tied around this where just getting some basic education could really, save the reputation of the company, save a company so much money down the road and heartache. And as we all know, it is really hard to claw your way back from bad press, So get it right the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a whole confidence piece here as well about people feeling they can drive some of that change internally. They have that knowledge and understanding to be able to sort of ask the right questions, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to push back in a way where they feel like, I know what this means, I know what this says, I know where I can get the information, and being able to draw a line in the sand and say, this won't pass, this won't fly, we're going to be in big trouble if we run this marketing campaign. And there's something for people to additionally think about as well. So the EU Parliament this year in March, they've signed a provisional agreement that they would start looking at the Green Claims Directive, and it's about pushing back against organizations making unclear or unsubstantiated claims. That will probably be voted into law in March of next year. And then that will be other things that you could really pay a heavy price. In addition to reputation, there is a real euro, pound, dollar amount that could cause implications with this as well. And that's not just in the EU, that'll be going global.
Yeah, the UK Advertising Standards Agency's released some rules this year around what you can and can't say as well. And it's very much aligned with that EU sustainability regulation, sustainable disclosures. And I think we are going to see more cracking down on this. And the real risk as well is there is way more public litigation claims being raised against brands and winning across Europe at the minute. And I think we're going to see an increasing trend of this where companies' claims are challenged and they're going to have to start either withdrawing those or thinking harder about what they say, but also working harder on their overall organizational sustainability. And I know some of those have been attacks on really big corporations, but I think we're going to see that increasing and falling outside of those really big businesses as well.
Yeah, it really is about that responsibility aspect and ensuring, and even reputationally the company. And to your point about the workforce, the younger workforce coming into play, that same KPMG report, Stephen, noted that for 18 to 24-year-olds, a company's values aligning with their own, 92% said that was critically important to their decision making. So it's just one more way PR and marketing has a role to play in sustainability and driving down emissions.
Yeah. And I was just going to say a bit of a plug as well. Talk to us a little bit about our Net Zero for Marketers course, PK, and what we cover off in that.
So this is a fantastic course that we've just launched. We learned from all of our learners, the 500 companies we've worked with and plus, that there was a real need for net zero courses that were role specific. And marketing, as we've just talked about, has a huge role to play in influencing behavior. And then that has the knock-on effect of driving down emissions. So in that particular course, if you're in marketing, if you're a one person doing it in your company, or if you have a marketing team, it's going to be a great course. It'll be on the 30th of January. It's 3 hours. It will be CPD certified as well, so you can get that towards your continuing education. And it will address almost all of these issues we've discussed today. And Paul doesn't know it, but his research actually is featured in the course as well. It was it was incredibly significant and impactful for our head of training who created that course. So it'll be fantastic. We really think if you've got any sort of curiosity.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's Net Zero for Marketers, and it's 3 hours. It'll be great.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up there, guys. We're working pretty much to time and give a chance for any questions if there are any. I think I speak for everyone to say, look, if there's anybody who's on the podcast listening in afterwards today, if you are struggling with any of the issues we talked about, I sound like one of those end of TV program things. If you want to get some advice on how you can embed sustainability within your marketing activities, within your organization, I think we'll all be really happy to sort of chat to you and point you in the right direction. So please feel free to reach out to any of us and we'll be happy to give you some advice there. Billy, do we have any questions? Do you want to throw it out to anybody that's listening? Great, Meredith. So that's our PR launch, some PR comms guidelines. Anthony, this is a sort of PR one, I think, maybe one for you. You best to pick this one up.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. And we're members of the CIPR as well, so aware of the guide that's been launched. And To go to the question around whether we're going to see guideline becoming a code of practice in the future, I don't think there'll be anything that will be PR specific. I think what PR and comms people will be expected to do is adhere to the same standard that exists with the Advertising Standards Authority, of the messaging and things like that there, but also making sure that, and this is where the strategic side of PR comes in, making sure that the senior leadership team are adhering to the latest in ESG frameworks for measurement and evaluation. So I don't think there'd be anything specific for PR. I think we're going to have to go to two separate places.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of separate issue here, which I think also feeds into the PR piece, which is one of increasing standardization across things like carbon footprint accounting, which is going to require all organizations to report on the same things in the same way. And we're seeing a big push towards this. And we did some analysis across high street banks. And one of our clients came back to us and said, how come our emissions are this when we're half the size of somebody else whose emissions are half the size of ours? And we said, well, they're not disclosing everything. They're not measuring everything. And I think once that gets leveled out, it's going to present some real PR challenges for brands who've been saying, we're doing all of this really well, but we choose to measure only and report on only certain things. So I think that disclosure piece is going to have a real knock-on effect into PR at some point in the not too distant.
Just to build on that, Stephen, that's going to get increasingly challenging within marketing as well. I mean, the marketing industry has got, a plethora of carbon calculators sprouting out of every agency at the moment. They all use different methodologies. They all use different technologies. The WFA is trying to put some standards together around advertising. Doesn't touch PR, doesn't touch digital and things of that nature. We're potentially launching an initiative to try and put in place. So if anybody's interested in this, get in touch. Codes of practice for how you actually use or build carbon calculators for marketing. So an overarching framework for that. And just a couple of other pieces to add in on that kind of PR kind of legislation and those sorts of guidelines. A couple of pieces that are really, really valuable and out and available now. The UN expert panel guidance on claims and disclosures that came out in 2022 offers 10-step framework for how you best do your net zero and claims disclosures. And that is superb. It's a really, really solid piece of work. The other thing we use a lot is PAS 808, the British Standards guidance document into how purposeful organizations behave. And for marketeers, it's really valuable because it makes you establish your worldviews, your stereotypes, your principles, and your behaviors on how you act as a brand. And it's written at a standards level. It's on its way down the ISO journey. So bringing in, think of it as filters, bringing your legislation, bringing your guidance documents from the USA, from the United Nations, bring in standards and governance frameworks, and it gives you a better framework for how you behave.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for that. And I think we have one more question, and we'll wrap up, and possibly one for you as well, Paul. But anybody else, feel free to jump in. What advice do you have for marketers whose business or senior leaders currently see other activities as a bigger priority than sustainability?
I'm happy to jump in there. So that's a question that comes up often in our courses with different individuals, and it's really about tying in that messaging and the communication of some of the information we've laid out for you today, understanding that, hey, if you want to be successful in HR and recruitment and hire the best, most talented people and retain them, sustainability is important. If you want to ensure your PR and your marketing is going well and your reputation is standing solid, that's important. And it might be, we don't like to really tie in the financial value of it, but at the end of the day, a lot of businesses, are for-profit businesses, and tying in the money savings aspect of, pay now or pay later could be a good communication form for them. So you've really got to find what motivates that specific leader and tie that in to that motivation.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Final comments from anybody? Anything else anyone wants to add?
I would say if you're trying to drive sustainability in your organization, your sustainability lead is your new best friend, because they're facing the same challenges.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, thanks very much, everybody. It was really interesting. Anthony, Paul, PK, thanks for your time this morning. Hope you have a great Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks very much, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.